Yo, what is going on, everybody? This is Beanie and welcome back to another player review. Yesterday we reviewed the pitchers that came out with this new content update, and today we are going to be reviewing the hitters that came out yesterday, and there are some really intriguing ones. There are I don't think there's anybody that's really dominating, but there are a lot of guys who I think could definitely find a spot on your team. A lot of diamonds, a lot of fairly solid golds, a lot of intriguing guys. But anyways, before we get started, I just want to remind you guys that the grade that I give everyone is a FAG. It's a 0 through 10 grade with decimal points, and it stands for Final Assessment Grade. You know, that's just kind of how the acronym came out. It's a FAG, but it's basically how what I think the utility that you're gonna get out of a player, how valuable I think that guy is going to be to your team, not necessarily how good that player is, because there is like a very slight difference. There is a fine line there, because how good a player is, like, you might have a 99 overall first baseman that just crushes the ball, but because first base is such an easy position to fill, I don't think he's going to provide as much value as a second baseman that crushes the ball. So I was just going to remind you guys of that, but now let's get into the player review. Okay, first up is the 97 Tony Perez, and guys, the third base is getting ridiculously saturated. There are so many good third basemen who can absolutely demolish the ball. And this guy is no different. He's a stud. Like, 92, 97 versus righties, 97, 80 versus lefties. 58 vision is a bit low, and his defense is, you know, a little bit, I've said this before, but 69, you know, kind of across the board, high 60s, that's not a lot different than low 70s, but we kind of look at it differently. Whenever we see all high 60s, we're like, oh god, this guy is going to be terrible defensively, but really, he's not going to be that much worse than a guy who is 71 across the board, if you know what I mean. It's just like that psychological thing. So I don't think he's going to be awful defensively for you, but I think he's definitely going to be below average. But you're definitely not getting this guy for his defense. You're getting him because he's going to hit just amazingly for you. And, you know, you can play him at third or first. I think he probably has more value at third just because even though it's starting to get really saturated, it's still slightly harder to fill, in my opinion, than first base, just because you can put virtually anybody at first base and they'll do fine there. You can't really say the same about third base, but, you know, even taking that into consideration, he plays two incredibly oversaturated positions, so that definitely knocks his value down. So I gave this guy a FAG of an 8.1. Still very good, but not the elite player that his hitting would suggest he should be. Okay, next up is a 94 overall Carlos Ruiz, and guys, this card is a catcher. We need more good catchers in this game, and this guy is definitely solid, but man, he really seems almost like a carbon copy of the Jonathan Lucroy, a slightly better version of that Jonathan Lucroy. The Ruiz has slightly more power and slightly better defense, just like a smidge. But, you know, overall, I think he's going to play awfully similar to that Lucroy card. I don't think there's going to be a lot of difference between the two. So, you know, and if I were giving that Lucroy a FAG, I would probably grade him out around like a 7.7. So I'm just going to give this guy one bump higher and go 7.8. A really good card, a guy that you can definitely plug in at catcher, and he'll probably stay in your lineup for a long time because he's gonna be solid all the way across the board. But there are better catchers out there, not many, like, you know, maybe one or two, but I mean, this guy really might be in like the top, you know, 4 or 5 catchers in the game, but he's definitely not just like this player that, you know, he's not jaw-dropping. Like, once they drop the 99 overall Mauer, that'll be jaw-dropping. This one just isn't yet, but he's still a very good card. So a FAG of a 7.8 for Carlos Ruiz. Okay, and now the one that a lot of people are probably waiting for, and that's a 93 overall Carlos Beltran. Whenever we saw that there was a Diamond Beltran released, everybody probably got really excited, and then they probably kind of came back down to earth a little bit once they saw his attributes. His card isn't bad, but it's just probably not what everybody expected out of a Diamond Beltran. Very good card, though. He, his contact versus righties, he's fine. Good contact, good vision. Elite power, 99 power. He's going to hit a ton of bombs for you. Your PCI may not be huge like it would be with a lot of other elite guys, but if you can get it there, he's going to hit a ton of bombs. And versus lefties, it's kind of the same deal. Your PCI is going to be even smaller, but if you can get it there, he's going to hit a ton of bombs for you. And that's the thing. This guy is a switch hitter. So that adds a lot of value. Switch hitters have been rare in this game. Good switch hitters are not easy to come by, and this guy is, and that could add some value to your lineup. Even if he doesn't hit lefties the best, he still has powers, so he's definitely a threat against lefties. He's just not going to get on base as often, but he's still going to hit a lot of home runs. Defensively, this guy is, above average, probably better, well, no, definitely better than the 99 overall Beltran from last year, defensively anyway. I don't know if you could say definitely, because that 99 did have all that speed, but this guy has a more reliable glove. He has better reaction and all that good stuff. So this is a guy that could definitely patrol center field somewhat effectively for you, but he's not going to be great. And his speed isn't, it's also one of those things that's not great, but his speed is good enough to where he can be a threat on the base paths. He's not going to be like some, guy that's going to go be perfect every time he steals. Like, he's probably going to get caught a lot, but you can take an extra base with him. You can steal periodically with him. He's a solid overall guy. I would definitely call this guy a five-tool stud, even though some of his tools are just like average to slightly above average. So I gave this guy a fag of a 7.3. He was kind of hard to grade because it depends on what you value. Maybe I could entertain an argument that he should be higher because he's a switch hitter, but I think a 7.3 is good now. But this may be one that I may come back. I'm planning on doing a corrections video, where I come back, and if I think I missed any grades or anything like that, I come back and I change them to just better reflect what they should be. But right now I'm going to stick with that 7.3. It feels pretty right. Okay, moving on. This is a card that I'm really excited about. I love this card. And it's a 90 overall Adam Jones. This card can hit 74-90 versus righties. Is very, very good. He does have that weird kind of reverse split where he doesn't hit lefties for power, but he hits them for better contact. But even against lefties, he has enough power to be able to drive the ball out of the ballpark. His vision is basically average. 64 is, if you were to take the median of every Diamond's vision in the game, it'd probably be right around there. His defense, though, is elite. I mean, he is a fantastic defender in center field. He has decent speed to go along with it. 73 speed, but 87 fielding with 85 reaction, and just an absolute cannon of an arm. This is a guy that, maybe if you're a more defensively inclined person, you could stick this guy in left field with Andre Dawson in center, and then, I don't know, maybe Ken Griffey in right field or something like that, to where you just have a stud defensive outfield, and you would be good, and you're not sacrificing that much bat to get that, because this guy, man, his defense is top shelf. I really like it. I know I said it was elite, but and there are guys with better defense than like 87 fielding with 85 reaction, but that coupled with the 94 arm strength, I think does make this guy elite. So yeah, I put his fag at a 7.9. I put it higher than the Beltrans because I do think that this guy's defense does bump his value up considerably. That may be a little bit heavy, like, the switch hitting part of Beltran might bring him a little bit closer to the Jones, plus he has power versus both sides. But I think this guy is just like a tad bit more complete than the Beltran, so I think that does kind of give him the edge. Okay, next up is the 87 overall Melky Cabrera, and Melky Cabrera is always such a weird guy to review for me. Every time he comes out, it seems like a card that I would really kind of dig because he's a switch hitter, and I love switch hitters. And he's had some years where he's had decent power and really good contact, doesn't strike out a lot. So high contact, high vision guy, but he just always manages to underwhelm me. And I think it's always because against righties, he just doesn't have that pop. And, he's a guy that can get on base versus righties, but your exit velos are going to be trash. Against lefties, he is very, very solid. 93, 76. So he's a guy that, maybe you want to stick on your bench. So, if you have like a really great lefty, guy that can't hit righties, maybe like the Curtis Granderson, maybe this is a good guy to use because even if they switch back to a righty, he can still be effective for you. Defensively, he's not very good. And he doesn't have a lot of speed. He's definitely below average on both of those fronts, so he doesn't get any points there. So with all that said, I gave this guy a fag of a 6.6. Still, good, but it was still well above average, but just not a guy that I get very excited about. And I don't know why, because he seems like a guy that I would be excited about. Up next is the 86 overall Howie Kendrick card, just kind of a meh card in general. The one bonus that he does have is that he can play 5 different positions. He can play second, first, or any of the outfield positions. So that's kind of nice, to have that, have a versatile guy that can hit lefties pretty well, that maybe you want to stick on your bench for like an event or something like that. And he hits righties okay too. 72-58 isn't terrible. Maybe this is a guy that you want to consider drafting in Battle Royale or something like that. But just overall, he just doesn't really do it for me. He has okay defense too, but not great. Just not a very exciting gold card that they could release. But once again, second base just keeps getting deeper and deeper. Typically it's a pretty shallow position, but I've kind of found that it's getting deeper and deeper as the year goes on. But yeah, so anyways, I gave this guy a fag of a 5.7. Above average. You could probably squeeze some utility out of this guy on the bench or something like that, but not a guy that I'm going to get, super hype about or anything. Up next is a card that I kind of feel the same way about. He's just not very exciting, even though he's a catcher that hits righties really well. Or not really well. He hits righties okay. He has 72, 81, contact power versus righties. Really low vision, though, so his PCI isn't going to be the biggest. Versus lefties, he's not very good at all. He's definitely a guy that you would want to platoon. Defensively, he's nothing special. He's just kind of average, kind of meh defensively. He's not going to be a star, but he's not going to be awful for you behind the plate. And, being that, he's a guy that you would definitely have to platoon, maybe with somebody, I don't know, like Russell Martin or somebody like that, somebody that can just hit lefties better than this guy. I don't know. And maybe if he were like 80, 89 versus righties, I would like this card a little bit more, but 72, 81, that's just not good enough to like really make up for it. I do think, I know that there are a lot of people that say that this card plays up for them. I've used him before, and last year I used him before, and he was okay for me, I guess, but nothing that I was ready to get rid of him once he was off my team. But I know some guys who rolled with him, like Paul Sporer. He rolled with him for a long time last year, if I recall correctly. And he really loved this card. I'm not as big of a fan, so I gave this guy a fag of a 5.1. It's just not a card that I get very excited about. It's with how many diamonds are in this game, it's kind of tough to be a gold and get me excited, but there are a few that have done that. The Kendrick and the Castro, they just don't do it. So I gave this guy a fag of a 5.1. And then finally, I thought that this guy kind of deserved a mention because he is very intriguing to me. And that's the 81 overall Jhonny Peralta. This is a guy that I could see maybe using in like an event or something where there are roster restrictions, because this guy can do a lot of things really well. For a shortstop, he can hit. Versus lefties, 90-80. That's a guy that you could stick on your bench if you have a left-handed left fielder or a left-handed shortstop that you need to platoon with. This guy is a perfect guy for that. He's not going to cost you a lot of stubs. And against righties, he is semi-competent, 75-54, not great, not terrible. You know, a guy that can get the job done, and defensively, he's not going to hurt you. 80 fielding, that's a fairly reliable glove, 73 reaction, 76 arm strength. Now, this is a card that whenever I saw it, but maybe because maybe if he were a gold, I wouldn't be as excited about it. Just because this guy's a silver, you know, you can kind of, you can figure out ways to use him in situations where you're trying to get your overall down more so than like a high gold or something like that. So I think that kind of adds utility to him. So I gave him a fag of a 6.3. And you know, this could definitely be like a budget option for a bench if you need a guy that can hit lefties, because this guy can do it and he can play some defense. I like this card. So Jhonny Peralta gets a fag of a 6.3. Did I say 6.1 before? I don't remember, but he gets a fag of a 6.3. But anyways, guys, that is going to do it for this episode of Player Reviews. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that I was clear and I was concise and that you know, had a good time with me today, because tonight I'm going to try to stream. You know, so weekend, I don't have a lot going on, and barring any unforeseen events, I will be streaming probably around 7 o'clock tonight. So be on the lookout for that. And yeah, guys, I think that's it. So I will say goodbye to you now, but instead of saying goodbye, I would just say peace.